welcome to this very, very special edition of the India Development Debate. I'm Tamanna Inamdar, and today we are speaking about millennials to millennials and asking why millennials seem to prefer the gig economy. Now, why am I saying this and what do I mean by gig economy? Well, remember the time when the biggest dream when you graduated out of college was to land a safe job with a big company and work for the next 20 to 25 years, climbing up the corporate ladder? Well, it seems the youth of today are not interested in that picture at all. A recent survey, in fact, claims that 94% of people they surveyed, millennials and Gen Z in India, prefer the gig economy. So to just get a sense of what the deal is about this gig economy and whether it's a good idea, I'm talking today to a very special set of people. We're hoping to have a great time on this show today. Welcome, guys. I have with me, of course, Aditi Mittal. All of you know her as the queen of stand-up.
Yes, that's
in fact,
right.
a profession which we didn't think would exist maybe about 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah. My mother still doesn't know what I do, so it's fine.
Okay, I have with me Karthik, who's all of 22, is into video editing, and says he never wants a fixed job.
Not as of now.
Not as of now. Well, at 22, so you have a lot of time to go. I also have with me today Amit, who is a digital marketing guru and gave up his steady job the moment he got his second promotion. He said enough is enough. We'll get into the reasons for that ahead.
Chasing the dreams.
Karan is also joining us, who spends his time counseling people on what to do with their lives, and maybe can give us some input into why the youth of today are not interested in steady jobs at all, and what this gig economy is all about. So let's get into it. Aditi, let me begin. Like I said, a few years ago, even a decade ago, this wasn't even a business. You would have been asked, okay, this stand-up, theek hai, but what is your job?
Correct.
Why do you think that people prefer, or you have preferred, to look at this alternate sort of stream? Did you ever feel this need, at least let me get a secure job to go along with this?
And so when I started doing stand-up, I've been doing it for 8 years. As I said, my mother still doesn't know what I do. When people ask her, "Aapki beti karti kya hai?" My mother's like, I guess, khandan ka muh kala. Like, she's very vague about what I do. And this was one of those things where I was looking for a job. I was looking for a job, in publishing and in, magazine content writing and everything. And then this stand-up thing started happening simultaneously on the side. And then I think the day I got my first paycheck, which was, paycheck is a generous word. What I got was half a plate of garlic bread and a Pepsi. That was my payment, and I was like, this is it. I want to work for garlic bread and Pepsi all my life. And I also am very lucky. I live with my parents. I live with my mom, and she sort of encouraged me through and through. And actually what had happened is I was in the US before that. I was working for a television channel in the US. And then in 2008, I think actually 2008 was a big year for all of us, because suddenly you realized that all the markers of what is stability, right, don't count for anything anymore. There were people who had been having, their PFs and all saved for years that disappeared overnight. And suddenly,
global financial meltdown.
And so suddenly you're like, oh, that dream of, oh my God, one day I will get this job and I will be in this job for 22 years and then I will retire with a gold watch. That suddenly became moot, because you're like, I could turn around and tomorrow some meltdown and, it won't make any sense.
No, but the formal economy is very much still around. And I'm opening this up. Anyone wants to come in, just let me know. The formal economy is very much still around. I'm just talking about a generational shift in mindset, and why, people just don't seem so excited about a steady 9-to-5 job anymore. Is it because you don't want to answer to a boss, or you don't want to wait for 2 weeks in a year to actually enjoy your life and get a holiday, work-life balance? What is it when, which has meant a lot to you and people you interact with?
See, I'll use one word that gets thrown around a lot ever since, I think, time immemorial, which is scope. Every year there's a new scope that comes in. So when I had just passed out my high school, there was a scope in biotechnology. It was the emerging field. And my parents were like, scope hai, live. And my parents are bankers. I come from a family generations of people who have had the real employment, as we say. And So I went to Canada to pursue biotechnology, and while I was doing that, I realized biotech ka scope hoga nahi hoga, but I was very sure it was not my scope. Like I hadn't had any scope in it, and I drew to filmmaking. And when I applied to VFS, which is Vancouver Film School, I got accepted there. Didn't get a scholarship. Told my mom what the fees was all about. She's like, "Come home, we'll figure it out." I took the flight home, and figuring out meant that let's do a job here and see if there's any scope of what the degree had. And so I started working in a lab. While I was in Canada, I had this very entrepreneurial spirit because you need to work to earn your parties.
No, but you had a job. You had a proper
So I had a 9 to 9 job.
Yeah.
Because I don't think 9 to 5 jobs exist.
No, they don't.
Except I think government jobs. I don't think anything else. Earlier, government jobs used to be the number one priority, and I think people used to celebrate. And
But also financial backing. Financial back. I want to say that a lot of this you see, and Karan, bear me out on this because you counsel so many youngsters. Those that can afford to take those risks do. Isn't that the case? Because they come from families who can give them some financial backing for some time till they find their feet.
Right. I mean, so you were asking earlier, Tamanna, about the mindset of the youth, that why are we even seeing this parallel gig economy? And of course, it's a huge economy. We are looking at, just in the US, 65 million workers, which is what, 40% and above of the workforce are gig workers. So that trend is moving straight to India, with 24% being from India. So I think two things. One, of course, is the risk-taking ability. And second is the entrepreneurial mindset. At the end, when you're taking on little gigs, in essence, you're working for yourself. You're your own boss. Many of the youth today are still inspired by the success stories of Mark Zuckerberg or Bill Gates, and those are their idols. And they're like, well, if those guys could not complete college, they attended college, they didn't complete it, but they set up these billion-dollar industries, we can do that. So it starts with one gig, then a second, then a third, and then they just start their own businesses. So it's that entrepreneurial mindset what has seeped into the youth, and the exposure. I mean, they're seeing so much more than what previous generations saw, so much more in terms of growth, in terms of career opportunities, in terms of different careers that weren't careers but now are careers, right? Social media influencers. I mean, the list can go on and on.
I mean, people are really making money from TikTok videos.
Exactly. Well, I'm studying EduTalk. EduTalk are short videos on education. So one of my students told me that, so why aren't you doing these little videos on TikTok? There's a huge market in tier 2, tier 3 cities. People want information. So TikTok is not just dancing videos. Actually, people want information. So yeah.
Okay, now you are the youngest of our lot over here today, Karthik. So is this gig business just for some time, or are you going to, like a good boy, go and get like a steady job, or you're saying that this boss ki baat sunna is not my deal?
No, so the thing is, the profile that I have is of a video editor. So the video editor, the editor that you have in your office, you can go and ask them what kind of a job it is and what timings does it demand.
Yeah, I'm aware.
Yeah, so you know it. So if I talk about the timing part, even if I join a full-time work, a full-time office, I will have to equally, I will have to give time equally as much as I give now.
Yeah.
So that is really not a problem for me. The only problem is that there are two things. So one is that I get an option to choose what I want to do. So it either has to monetarily satisfy me or creatively satisfy me. So if I join a full-time job, nothing helps. Neither does it, like, there's a salary, itna hi milega, you won't get more than that. And you don't have any option in the kind of work that you get also. So in this, while I'm freelancing, I have the option to choose what I want to do and charge as much I want to do. So that is the
How
primary
sustainable
difference.
is it? How sustainable? And anyone can come in. How sustainable is it? I mean, do the gigs have to keep rolling in?
Right, and
Isn't it?
what happens after a while? Let's say that the gigs work in. I have a student, and she did the same thing. She wanted to go and study abroad, and she wanted to make a career in another country, and she kept getting delayed because the gigs kept coming in. She was video editing, just very similar to what you were doing, and she was making good money. Of lately, the gigs have reduced, and she's already crossed that age when she wanted to go and study. She has family issues now, and she can't go because the money stopped coming in, the gigs stopped flowing.
But I
so
think
that stability,
that also depends on person to person, the kind of contacts that you make, the kind of work that you
Sure.
plan to do, and the kind of chemistry that you have with your clients. So I've got clients right from a political party till a very garment shop owner. So I've worked for both these extremes. So it totally depends.
How long have you been doing this now?
So I started to learn edit in 2012, and I started working in the sense chota kaam karke. I started. Yeah, so that was in 2014, 15.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you've seen about 4 years of this cycle right
Yeah.
now. You know what comes to mind, Aditi, is what do now people who, and it almost seems alien, I think, to as a concept to me and maybe some of my generation, that you'd not have a steady job. Then what happens when you want to make commitments? You want to build assets. You want to buy a house. You want to buy a car. You want to build a family.
And that's why actually, I mean, one of the, I guess, the cons of living in the gig economy or making money in the gig economy is that then in the time that you're working, then you're on 24/7. In fact, as we speak, my phone is ringing.
I'm sure you're very popular.
For someone who's like, yaar, tu kaam karne aaja. And so, I mean, here's hoping, my fingers are crossed that, I won't even have time to spend money for the next 5-6 years. And then, by the time I'm grossly irrelevant, I'll have enough saved up in order to pursue whatever dreams I have. And that's why, I have the freedom to choose whatever clients I want. I have the freedom to charge as much as I want, and I have the freedom to make my own hours. And that, I think, especially with, again, as I'll come back to the disillusionment with the formal economy, the disillusionment with kya boss ka magajmari sunne ka pura din, to sit in the freaking politics over there. You only can, if you do this position for 2 years, will you move ahead to the next position? Why? If you can, and especially if you have the backup, if you have parents, who are willing to keep you around, why not?
An interesting story. You born and brought up in Haryana, moved to Mumbai,
in Bombay.
Moved to Mumbai and reinvented yourself here, if I may so say.
So the biggest relief is what I would say, that when you go to sleep, you don't have to think ki kal kab uthna hai. Like you can get up whenever the heck you want to get up at. So that's one big relief I feel there is.
Not live weekend to weekend.
Yeah, not at all. Most of the days I don't even know what day is it. Like, I don't know what day is it today.
So I'm going to add to this. See, I am also an employer. We employ a lot of freelancers. Yeah. So if I have 10 people working for me, I also have 15 to 20 freelancers depending on projects.
Yeah.
And so one of my content heads, she actually is a mother who stays in Bangalore. And she's been with me for the past two years.
Yeah.
So this particular job gives her the freedom to be a mother, to stay at home, but at the same time, she's always working at the same time. Yeah. So for me, I get the freedom of, I can call her up at even 11 and ask her to do something. And she gets the freedom that, okay, you know what, I have to go attend a PTM on Wednesday and I have to do it, so I'm not available for 2 hours. And for us, WhatsApps have become the new conference rooms. Yeah. So the element of space has sort of evaporated. So if I started a gig, I have also, networked to many other gigs. And it's become like a medium-sized gig now. If we grow, then obviously it's going to, the pool is going to grow bigger.
Yeah.
So it's not like of course, I'm also employing employees and I have the same sort of setup, but it's more flexible that way. It's, we have, names like I'm not the founder and the CEO, I'm the drunk monk. I'm, like...
Okay, so you cool question.
Yeah, it's a cool question.
Okay, so it's cool. Yeah.
May I also add, I feel like, and especially I think like with a job like mine, I feel like it's a very personal, like if I'm trying to get a poster made from someone, right, for a show.
Yeah.
I know that I would be more sort of bent towards a freelancer. I know, because I know that I'd be able to communicate to them more passionately and excitedly. If I realize, I wake up at 11 in the night and I'm like, arey nahi, ye wala dalna hai. I know that I can put in that message and not sort of have to worry about कि नहीं. Then she'll be like, नहीं मेरे को boss को पूछना है, boss को उसको पूछना है, फिर उसको पूछना है, फिर actually हमारे पास लाल रंग नहीं है. No, you know what I'm saying? It becomes much simpler when you're talking to this person and you're like, नहीं, I really need it to be red.
But then that's the flip side of the 9 to 5 fixed hour scenario, because you're always at work. You never really switch off.
This is true.
But coming to your question about the money part, that do they make more money?
Yes.
I think it depends. I mean, they're starting as freshers. So what you would get paid in a full-time job as a fresher,
of course,
you would relatively make more money. There's no two ways about it. But then again, it's the curve that after working for a few years, either you don't make as much as you were earlier, Or if you, like you said, depends if you're really good and you have good contacts, then you can make a lot more money. But more often than not, you start declining. Whereas in a corporate firm, you may then start going up, right?
You hit the mid-level sort of ceiling.
Right.
It's interesting, back and forth about the pros and the cons. But I think one big question that we haven't spoken about yet is the gig economy growing just because kids, the youth, millennials, Gen Z, whatever you want to call yourself.
Youth yapa.
Okay, you say it, I can't. But whatever you want to call it. Is it because they don't want to be tied down, or is it because of a lack of options? Let's talk about that also, because the rate of formal employment being added to our economy is woefully slow compared to what our requirement is in the number of educated youth entering the market.
First of all, thank you for including me in the Gen Z and the millennial. I really appreciate that.
We're not asking numbers here.
आपकी तो अच्छा से आपकी उम्र का पता ही नहीं चलता.
So happy. But
let's not
I think
age shame here. But go on.
Necessity, of course. I mean, when you look at, like, I work with a lot of kids who live in the slums, who live in the impoverished areas, and many of them, while they would like to get formal jobs, sometimes are not qualified enough to get those jobs. And for them, it's like you get a small gig, they take it up. You get another one, they take it up. And if that starts earning money, they forget their formal education and they go to just those gigs because it's necessary for them. And I think necessity drives, and the bulk of our country is living in these conditions where they need more help.
Let's put it in perspective. These formal professional jobs that we're talking about, non-government, is in the single digits as a percentage of employment in this country. It's barely 3 to 5%. So in this very confined ecosystem and in an urban context, let me narrow it down further. Now I've got you guys talking about why people who have the education, who may have the skills, are they choosing to go out on their own for lifestyle needs, or is there really a dearth of opportunity matching their skill set?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of both.
It's a
It's probably both.
It's a combination of both, especially with the news around the economy for the past like 2-3 years has been pretty grim, and the numbers, as you're saying, are sort of alarmingly lopsided, and I feel like for a large part, especially our generation, the gig economy is going to be a solace. It's going to be the only option.
The other aspect is why. I spoke to you a little while, I asked you a little while earlier, what happens when you want to buy a house, car? This is the same economy, which is the same generation who's apparently tanking the auto industry.
I actually don't want a house and a car. I don't want a house and a car. I want the freedom to be able to get up tomorrow and move to Nepal if I feel like. I realize day after tomorrow that turns out I am a Sri Lankan monk and I want to just move, and I want to have that option. I don't want कि नहीं ऐसे किसको भाड़े के लिए ढूंढो फिर अरे नहीं leakage हो गया, you're sitting in the monk, in the monastery in Sri Lanka being like नहीं कोई fix करो इनका tap. I don't want all that stress.
Is what happens when the party sort of ends, when you grow up, you have to start adulting, you have family, school fees, bills to pay.
We were told there would be food here.
That's all. What happens then? I'm coming back with that, so don't go away. Very short break and we'll be right back. All right, we're back on this millennial special on the India development debate, and today we're talking about the gig economy with people who've chosen to go freelance and don't see any reason to come back to the boring 9-to-5 job or the corporate sector at all. We've talked in the first half about all the upsides of the gig economy. You're master of your own time, you can demand your own price, you can take a holiday whenever you wish. Now let's talk about the other side. Let me not call it the downside. What happens when the gravy train stops rolling in? Does that happen, Karan? Because, like you said, when you're starting out, you may be more in demand, but after a point you hit that sort of mid-level patch where in a corporate scale you may grow much more. As a freelancer, do you still have that much scope, or does it thin out as you move to the top?
A lot of the students that come to me, many of them come in this phase of their life where they've spent several years doing different gigs because the money was good, times were good. But they reached a point where it wasn't good anymore and they needed some kind of formal education to get a permanent type of job. The businesses, so-called, the gigs, so-called, didn't really work. So it does happen, and it happens more often than not. There are some gigs and some people who are really good at what they do. The economy supports them, the industry supports them, and they're going to do well for a much longer period than one would think. But for majority of people, that's not the case. And at that point, we have to get them formal education and then possibly help them get a job in an industry that they want to be in. In the end, it's not all roses for the gig economy. Things at some point do start coming down.
To be fair, job stability is not guaranteed even in a corporate
Sure.
structure.
Correct.
But you do have a provident fund to fall back on. You have
Correct.
health benefits.
Correct.
You have certain benefits that the law gives you,
Yeah.
which as a freelancer no one has to give you.
Yeah.
So you have a severance package if you get kicked out. Most companies would give you that. What do you do over here? Someone just has to call you and say no, thank you.
Yeah, and that's fine. I mean, literally, and it falls into the downsides as well, is that in the 5 years that I am making money, then I am not having time to spend the money because I am trying and like spending all my time making that money with full knowledge that this is not going to last forever. And also, again, I keep coming back to the disillusionment of 2008. I really saw, people that I was very close to, lose their retirement funds and lose pretty much all that they had worked for their whole lives. And it blew my mind that this could happen to someone who had worked so hard and who had done what was right. And so I feel a little more hedonistic, to be very honest.
Nobody's stopping anyone from investing. I mean, PF at the end of the day is an investment.
Yes.
If you're making more money for a certain period of time, if you're, if you do your investments right,
Very
you
good
have a
point.
better future.
Yeah.
And it totally then comes down
And
to
buy
you.
your health insurance.
Buy your own health insurance, which is now, see, necessity is the mother of invention. If there's a lot of gigs being played out now, so are the mediclaims and the health insurances also have come down. We're not reliant on the government anymore. We're not reliant on an AIMS anymore. There are mediclaims that are as cheap as a few thousands per month, which I think anybody who's a part of gig economy can easily pay. And of course, there are investments that we are now smarter ourselves to do. There are investments that we can do in real estate. There are investments we can do in people. There are investments we can do in mutual funds. There are investments that now they're not allowed anymore, but people had done in crypto. So there were a lot of, in the end, it's your decision. The PF money, in the end, yes, towards the end of 30 years, will give you some sort of dividends, wherein you are able to afford the things that you hadn't, you won't be in. But if you're able to afford them, we would like to live our dreams in our 30s rather than in our 50s.
Yeah.
And with our kids.
What he's saying is, I think, it's very industry specific, because if I talk about the industry that I work in, it's actually booming right now. Like every little industry that there is needs to have a digital presence because it's become the thing. But everybody wants it. Not everybody can, hire people on a full-time basis in their company. So they would need people who do this on a freelance basis. So that's where I have to be alert enough to, seek such people. Might as well I'll ask you if I can edit this interview.
Yeah, I think the biggest draw, which has been and always has been of a safe sort of corporate job, is that paycheck on the first of the month.
Yeah.
We've spoken about everything, but we haven't spoken about that. Now, you may not know what day of the week it is, but I think you will know when it's the first.
When I have to make the invoice, I have to know which day is it, because I have to fill it.
Or, when all of your payments start coming in, you have to pay the bills.
That's
And
true, because
does the money roll in on time, is my question.
No.
Because this is a lot of complaint that I
not
often
in my
hear.
case. Not in my case,
Yeah.
for sure. Because there's this thing that I realized, that the amount of time I spend on actually working is way too less than the time I spend on chasing payments. Because July ka payment is coming in December, or December ka payment is coming in September. Because you never know. If the client gives the payment on time, it's a miracle. Like I would just give him a discount of 10% just for that. Ki time pe payment kiya.
No, so that's my question. Then what happens? And I think everyone has horror stories.
There is
to
no
get over
written
that.
word in gigs. The
Yeah.
gigs does not have a written word. So that fear of losing out on projects is what that drives a lot of people into doing projects that they may not get paid for.
Paid for, yeah.
There are, in creative fields, there is a lot of credit the word that has been pushed really hard, that you'll get credit or this work will be
exposure.
the exposure, the
यार,
credit.
exposure को क्या चावल के साथ मिला के खा
मेरा
सकते हैं
रेंट है
तब
800 एक्सपोजर
Exposure to sun gives you vitamin D.
I can feel the pain. I can feel
Yes,
the
so
pain.
I tell my students, get contracts in the beginning. I mean, like you said, not everyone's going to pay up front. There's too much competition.
So I had a contract
you want
with the political
business.
party.
So I'll tell you what they do. So A, you get the contract. B, you get a lawyer who's just starting out just like you to come and be your lawyer. One legal notice, and I promise you, your client, 90% of your clients will just pay because no one wants to deal with legal problems. So while there are no laws to protect gig workers, the contract protects you. And that's why get the
I think that's
contract,
a-
get a lawyer who's also like just starting off. They're not going to charge
The
you much
freelance
for
lawyer.
it. There are even websites.
yeah.
There are legal websites which send legal notices for as little as 200 or 300 rupees.
Wow.
So you can get just
Oh
send a
my
legal
God, I'm gonna
notice.
send one to
Right?
everybody.
And that can protect you because it's such an important point that if you're not going to get the money, you're not going to invest it, you're not going to have a future. It all starts
Yeah,
from there.
yeah.
I'm going to differ a little over here because from my personal experience also, I'm lawyered up. But there are a lot of places where the money is still stuck. And you know where the fear is coming in, you'll get a bad rep.
Reputation in the industry.
And that is has caused me a lot of loss in my first year, my second year, now when I'm in my third year and I'm relatively now successful. Even now, I don't have for the past 8 months or 9 months a single contract coming my way. I've not had a contract. I've worked on the word on basis of emails and plans that are being shared and advances that are being worked in.
How do you do that? I mean, I don't know.
Now that is something that
I think this is also very industry specific.
this is very industry
Because
specific.
you work with the movies.
Yeah.
You work
Yeah.
with the movies, which anyway have quite a reputation, but they're getting more professional now, I believe, or production
It's
houses.
still a long way to go.
Not with the entire crew.
It's still a long way to go. It's just the studios that have gotten very professional, but independent producers are still stuck in the same rut. Wherein reputation, the kind of networking you do, it's more, they're not paying you, yet they're spreading negativity about you, and you're doing all the hard work and still you're chasing them for the money. And at a point of time, there are many producers, which I'm not going to name, I've stopped chasing. That I've, said
must
there are
name
bad debts, let's move on, let's find more projects. There sometimes they have the audacity to repeat me once again, and then a lot of
But you go
How
back.
do you go back without being paid?
So initially, yes, I did. Then I thought I'm going to go through that whole self-help books phase. Didn't happen.
It's like double or nothing.
Double or nothing. Yeah, it's like double or nothing. And now, since the reputation's built up a little bit more, now I've gotten a little firm on the payments spectrum. But I'm still afraid of asking for payments where I know that they're either not coming or they're going to come really less. The chasing is there.
No, so how do you tackle this? I mean, you, like you said, you can get a lawyer, send legal notices if that helps, but there is, the labor laws would cover this to some extent, labor disputes would cover this to some extent, but I think there's very little information and very few people really want to take that route.
Yeah.
So,
And the job
It's
that you do is
time-consuming.
very specific. Like I'm editing the trailer of the making of a film. So what law would protect this?
Yeah, another thing
This
is
is very
post-dated
specific.
checks.
So I really don't think there are any laws.
You
laws
know,
that
so here's the thing, right? I mean, and this is a fear that we all have. Having said that, a lot of us just don't ask out of fear. And I think that is where the problem lies. A lot of us are just terrified to ask because we're like, milega to nahi, I don't know, I don't want to be seen as inconvenient. Ask. And I think that is one thing that the gig economy is going to teach us, is that jab khane ke wande hote to पूछना पड़ता है. And so just putting it out there in the terms of engagement with you that, okay, you know what, this is how much I charge for this much time and I expect a 50% payment in advance. Then baad mein nahi aaye 25% aaye, whatever it is, you can still sort of, then decide how much time you want to spend into getting the money back. But putting it out there that, you know what, I would expect 50% of a payment, this is how we generally operate.
Yeah.
Are these terms okay?
If this becomes a norm, great. Otherwise, being shamed for
no, it's a very personal thing that she is doing herself. Others could do it.
if
may
this
or may
becomes a
not
norm,
succeed.
then it becomes a movement.
Yeah.
If this is not a norm, then we're still, we're shamed for asking our own money.
Correct.
Correct. And
Which
it's
should not
actually,
be the
we're
case.
shamed for asking your
Yeah.
own money. And the thing is, especially if you come from a background or a family background where you're not the prodigies of entrepreneurs or people who have done business, you don't have that, you just acquire that, you don't acquire that knowledge from your gene pool. You first are shamed. Okay, you're doing a thing which
That's so
the
crazy.
society
Family ने किया, तुम क्या कर
is not really ready for. Then at the same time, you are not stable. तुम्हारा को कभी पैसा आता है, कभी नहीं आता. And then why are these people not paying you? Maybe it's your own fault. And तुम्हारा edit अच्छा नहीं हुआ है. Maybe your plans didn't work out. The film's not doing
तुमने
good.
दही खा के पैसे नहीं पूछा तो इसीलिए पैसे नहीं आए. अरे यार.
The film flopped, so marketing guy does not get money. So I'm just saying, there are the absurd reasons you would buy, because we still are coming out of that mindset into a new mindset.
Yeah.
I'm hoping this becomes a norm so
Yeah.
that we are stronger ourselves.
No, but that's a very good point. There is still some amount of social pressure and stigma attached with not having a quote-unquote secure, stable job.
Yeah.
Listen,
There are also websites. Sorry, there are also websites where, I mean, it's called Upwork. It's like an example of a website which connects freelancers and gig providers with companies. So the website takes the money from the company first, keeps it in an escrow. Then once the job is completed and both sides have given their go-ahead, the gig worker gets paid.
But Karan, unless there's volume and the company cannot get someone else to do the job outside of this ecosystem, it won't make too much of a difference, because if you can get someone to do your job and then possibly not pay them, you always have that option, right?
Right. But another way, like let's say for example, you've been bitten twice, thrice, and people are just not paying you. This could be an option where you're like, at least the money is in escrow and you get it when the job is completed. Especially when the volume is huge in terms of the quantity of money involved.
Time for a round of tough questions, okay? Because these were all like sleepers. Now, okay, honest truth. If today you were in a position where you were the sole bread earner of your family, okay? You had to pay for your own upkeep, your parents, possibly a spouse/partner, maybe a child. It's all on you. Would you still be able to wait for a payment for 6 months or 8 months? Or would you then have to scurry back to something more secure? I just want to understand how much that bandwidth you have contributes to the freedom to look at these options.
Personally, now I do. I will never go back to a regular job, only because the amount of money that I'm earning right now, I will never be able to do it with a degree that I don't have. So the disconnect there is too far. I have come a long way. I'm not going to go back. Am I
5 years earlier, when you were starting out, if that was the case?
When I was starting out, obviously I would have wanted a very stable job, which would be in an MNC, which would give me the perks that my friends had. I would love to travel, not leave office on a Saturday and Sunday. Now, too into it, I can even leave office for 2 months straight. And I can just take a off. I have people filling in for me. I may just start from where I have left off. Also, the kind of money that I'm making now, I won't have been able to do that. The 3-4 years of struggling has paid off. So when it's paying off right now, I don't want to shift.
Yeah, but Aditi, I'm going to end by, since you were the super success story. Oh my God! Give a little bit of.
Say this louder for my mother.
Give a little bit of gyan and some advice to those who are starting out and thinking of doing something which sounds crazy right now, which sounds ludicrous right now, which could have been when you started out 8 years ago. What would you say?
If you can sort of keep these pros and cons in mind, remember that freelancing is amazing, because depending on the industry you're in, you don't have to have a bath till about 1 in the afternoon.
You don't start your day, you start your afternoon.
You start your afternoon. You have a lot more time to spend with family members, or to pursue other activities. Like I now am learning the ukulele. मैं हर सुबह 2 घंटे उठ के तुनतुना बजाती हूँ, which my mother calls the tuntuna. She's like, ये निकालो घर से. But it's something I can do, and it's really centered me and really calmed me, and I'm planning to use it in my act very soon. The third thing I would say that's amazing about this is, I'm sitting here and it's quite unbelievable, frankly, that I'm just saying these silly things and I'm being, talking about this crazy world of, it wouldn't have been possible if I hadn't taken the chance. And so a lot of it, and also the fourth thing maybe is, meeting amazing people like yourself. I think that's, I mean, I'm called myself amazing, but what I meant was, you know, you meet...
You've called us amazing.
Haan, that's what I meant. That's what I meant. He sun leta hai. It's about sort of coming in contact with people who, much like yourself, are then insanely driven and excited about what they're doing, very passionate. And you can connect with them much easier on that level than like some guy who's like, nahi, main baad mein phone karta hu, you know, 6 baje email bhejo, triplicate mein form leke aao. It's so much nicer when you're sort of meeting people who are passionate about it.
It sounds like the dream. It sounds like the dream gig, but it has, of course, its pros and cons. But I want to thank all of you for joining us on this very special episode where, you know, we're trying to discover what goes through the millennial mind. Thank you for being with us on the show, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you.